Today we're going to be talking about what is a deposition and some of the things to expect at your deposition. A deposition is the defendant's opportunity to ask you questions under oath about the case and things related to the case. What does that mean? Well, it means you're going to be asked to raise your right hand, swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, just like you see in the movies, all right? Now, a lot of people wonder, who's going to be there? Well, of course, your attorney will be there with you defending your deposition. There will also be the attorney from the other side who's going to be asking your questions. There will be a court reporter there who's sitting in the room, or if it's on Zoom, she or he will be on Zoom. The court reporter is taking down everything that is said on a court reporter machine, and she's going to type up like a movie script about question answer of everything that was said at your deposition, and you'll get it in a few weeks after the deposition to review. There might be a videographer there. The videographer is just going to be videotaping the deposition. There also could be, now this is the most uncommon person to be there, but the defendant could be there. Other parties have the right to be there, but I would say that happens in about less than 1% of cases. In the over 2,000 depositions I've done, I can think of 2 or 3 where a party actually was at the deposition, a defendant was there. So that's pretty uncommon. How do you dress for a deposition? Well, you want to dress conservatively. If you're a male, wear a collared shirt, maybe that's a polo. If you have like a work shirt that has your work stuff on it, that's fine. You don't want to wear like a graphic t-shirt, or you don't really want to be showing too much skin. You wouldn't want to wear a suit unless you wore a suit every day, because that really wouldn't make sense. So, collared shirt, polo, maybe if you had a dress shirt is fine. Whatever you would wear to church. If you go to church, that's what I recommend. If you're a female, you also want to dress conservatively. Don't want to show too much skin. You don't want to show a lot of cleavage or a midriff. If you have tattoos, male or female, best to wear clothing that will cover those up. No issue with tattoos. I think tattoos are awesome, but we're trying to put our best foot forward. So we want to keep in mind that not everybody, thinks tattoos are cool like myself. So, if you have tattoos, best to wear clothing that will cover that up. A lot of people wonder, how long will the deposition take? It depends. In California, the party has up to 7 hours to take a deposition. In Washington, they have up to 10 hours to take the deposition. That does not include breaks. So if you take breaks, it could be a little longer. What I can tell you is it's very uncommon for an attorney to take the entire time that they're given. It really depends upon the type of case, how complex it is, if there's issues as to a dispute of liability, depends upon how much medical care you've received. If you've seen a lot of doctors over many years, it's going to take a little longer because they're going to ask you about all of that. If you have prior claims or lawsuits or subsequent claims or lawsuit, it's going to take time because they're going to ask you about those things. So it really depends. It also really depends on how you answer the questions. If you answer the questions straight and to the point and only answer the question that I ask, deposition team seems to go a lot quicker than if you kind of ramble on. Another really common question I get asked is, how should I answer the questions? Well, this is the number one rule. If you remember one thing from today's video, it's this: tell the truth. If you do that, you've aced the deposition. Just tell the truth. That's the number one thing, okay? You never want to exaggerate. You never want to embellish. And most importantly, you never want to lie. I know you guys wouldn't do that, but you just never ever want to lie or mislead. You want to tell the truth, okay? Now, some people, might say, well, what if I don't know the answer to the question? That's a good question to ask. Don't guess. We never want you to guess, okay? So if you don't know the answer, it's completely fine to say, I don't know, or I don't remember. They're going to be asking you questions about events that happened 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. So it's completely fine to say, I don't recall, or I don't remember, if you don't recall, or if you don't remember. But there's a difference between not remembering and not knowing something, which would be, you just have no personal knowledge of it. And then there's situations where you have some information, you don't have the exact information maybe they're asking for, but you can give the information you have. And so what we like to do is explain the difference between a guess and an estimate. The way I like to do this is I give an example. So if I was to ask you, how much money is in my pocket here right now? How much money is in my jeans pocket? That'd be a pure guess, right? Because you have no idea how much money is in my pocket. I could have no pockets. I could have no money in there. I could have $100. You have no idea how much money is in my pocket because you've never seen me put the money in my pocket. You've never been into my pocket. But if I were to ask you how much money is in your purse or wallet at home, you could probably give me an estimate of that, right? For example, maybe you went to the bank a couple days ago, you took out $100, and the only money you've spent since then is you went to the gas station and you spent $75 filling up, or about $75 filling up. So you might not know to the penny how much money's in your purse or wallet, but you have some personal knowledge of it that you took out $100, you've spent about 75, so you maybe have 20 to 25 bucks. So you could give me an estimate of that, even if you don't know the exact dollar amount. But if I'm to ask you how much money's in my pocket, you have no personal knowledge of that. So any number you gave would be an absolute guess. We never want you to guess. But where you have some information that you can give, it's important that you do that and tell us you're estimating. So in that situation, if I were to ask you how much money is in your pocket, you would say, my best estimate is between $20 and $25, right? Because you always want to tell us, or tell the attorney who's asking you the questions, that it's an estimate when it is, okay? If it's not an exact answer. Don't answer questions that you don't, if you don't understand the question, don't answer it, all right? So there will be times where the attorney who's asking you the questions asks a bad question that you just don't understand. It's very important that when that happens, you immediately notify that attorney that you don't understand the question. Because if you give a response, the assumption will be that you understood the question. And that's fair because you can't answer the question and then 6 months later at trial say, oh, well, I didn't actually understand the question, that's why I gave the answer. It doesn't work like that. So when they ask you a question that you don't understand, you gotta say, sir, miss, I don't understand your question. Or can you rephrase that? But never answer it if you don't understand it. So these attorneys sometimes will ask bad questions that you don't understand. Tell them, hey, I don't understand your question. That's very, very important. Only answer the question that is asked. A huge majority, I'd say probably 60, maybe even 70% of the questions they ask you are going to be yes or no questions. If they ask you a yes or no question, give a yes or no answer. Now, there's going to be at least 30 or 40% that are more open-ended questions that aren't yes or no. Then, of course, answer that question completely. You always want to answer the question completely. But only answer the question that they ask. For example, if they were to ask, say you have 2 children. If they ask you, do you have any children? That's a yes or no question. So you would either say yes or no. In this case, because you have 2 children, you would say yes. That'd be the correct answer. You wouldn't want to say, yes, I have 2 children. I have a daughter and a son, and my daughter's 26. She actually came to pick me up from the crash. I told her about how much pain I was in, and she actually saw one of the other witnesses, and talk to her, blah, blah, blah. That's the bad answer, because they never asked you how many children you have, if they were male or female, what the children know about the crash. They didn't ask you those questions. The attorney was just asking you, do you have any children? So that's a yes or no answer. If they want to ask you about those things, they will. We're just here to answer the questions that they ask. I find when we do that, the deposition just goes by much quicker and much smoother. You don't want to try to anticipate where the attorney's going, okay? Because we don't know what that attorney's thinking. You may think, oh, well, the attorney's going to ask me this question next, so I'll just answer it. Don't do that. Just focus on their question and answer their question, nothing else. One question I get sometimes is, what if I want to change my answer during the deposition? Like, you answer a question and then a couple hours later, it comes to you that, you forgot something or you left something out. That's completely fine. It's best to answer all the questions while you're if you're going to change an answer, to change it at the deposition. That way the attorney has the ability to kind of follow up with some more questions if they want to. If you're going to change your answer, it's best to kind of notify your attorney maybe on a break, hey, I think I remembered something, so that he can find an appropriate time for you to tell that attorney that, hey, you might want to change your answer. Another important thing to remember is during the deposition, only one person is supposed to be talking at a time, because the court reporter, she's taking down everything that is said. It's hard to take down two people at once. So just after the attorney asks a question, leave a short pause so you can think about your answer, but it also leaves that pause so you don't talk over each other, so it makes a clean record. It'll just make the deposition go by much smoother. A question I get sometimes is, what if I don't want to answer the question? Well, generally speaking, whether we want to answer the question or not, we got to answer all of the questions the attorney asks you. If the attorney asks you an improper question about information that they're not entitled to, your attorney will object and tell you not to answer that question. But unless your attorney tells you, hey, don't answer that question, we have to answer all of the questions that the other attorney asks. But if you think there's some type of area in your case, maybe your past medical history that you think is very private, that you don't want to talk about, it'd be a good idea to raise that with your attorney during your deposition prep, so you guys can go over it, and he or she will be able to prepare you for how to handle that, or he can talk to the opposing counsel before the deposition to kind of clear up that issue. So if it's possible to not go into that, they can deal with that at that time. During your deposition, your attorney will make what's called legal objections. You might hear them say, objection, calls for speculation, objection, vague, ambiguous. Those objections think about them as just stuff, for the attorneys to fight over. You're still going to answer the question if there's a legal objection. The only time that you're not going to answer the question is if your attorney says, objection, I'm instructing my client not to answer. If your attorney says that, obviously you're going to listen to him or her. You're not going to answer that question, right? But that's going to be really clear. Your attorney's going to literally say, don't answer the question, and then you don't answer it. But otherwise, when you hear these other objections, those are just for the record. You're still going to be answering the question after the objection is made. Breaks. You can take as many of them as you want. I like to take a break about 1 hour every hour on the hour. I like to get up, stretch, get some water, use the restroom. So that's kind of how often I like to take a break. The only kind of rule about breaks during depositions is if the attorney has asked you a question, you got to answer that question before you go on the break. So if someone asks you a question, you can't say, I want to go take a break. No, you got to answer the question before you go on the break. But you can take as many breaks as you want. I know a lot of times, if you have an injury, sitting for long periods of time can be really painful. So when that occurs, if you get in pain, just say, hey, I need to take a break, and get up and go stretch. Do whatever you have to do. We want you to be comfortable. If you got to use the restroom or if you're in pain, just say, hey, I need to take a break. totally fine. Take as many breaks as you want. It's not meant to be like, an interrogation. People wonder, well, what if I want to ask my attorney a question during the deposition? That's completely fine. Same kind of rule as breaks. If you want to talk to your attorney, if there's a question that's been asked, you got to answer that question before you talk to your attorney. And if you want to talk to your attorney, you just say, I'd like to take a break. Take a break and you can talk to your attorney during the break. I want to talk to you all about what's called the attorney-client privilege. This means that, as many of you guys have heard, any communications between your attorney and you, they're protected by the attorney-client privilege. So during your deposition, if the attorney ever asks you a question that requires you to reveal information that you've talked about with your attorney, or a conversation with your attorney, or advice that your attorney gave you, you're not going to answer that question, okay? Because that's protected by the attorney-client privilege. So if they ever ask you a question and you say to yourself, oh, well, I'm going to have to talk about this conversation I had with my attorney, no. You don't want to do that. Don't do that. Don't ever talk about, oh, hey, my attorney told me this. No, that's 100% protected. If you ever hear yourself saying, hey, my attorney told me this, you shouldn't be saying it, because that's protected. They don't want to know that. They know they're not entitled to it, okay? But just because it's a piece of information that you've talked about with your attorney, maybe it's like a fact that you knew, outside of talking to your attorney, but you also talked to your attorney about it, you can say that in your answer. But if it's ever just a communication that only relates to a conversation between you and your attorney, you don't want to answer that question. Most of the time, your attorney, if they hear a question that's going to call for you to give a communication with your attorney, they'll jump right in and say, objection, attorney-client privilege, and they'll instruct you not to answer. A lot of times people wonder, can I review my discovery responses before my deposition? The answer is yes, of course you can. Your discovery responses, you'll remember, are those written questions. Probably got a big stack of paper that you had to fill out, where they're asking you questions about your background, they're asking you questions about your medical treatment for the case, asking you questions about how the crash happened. There's your request for production of documents that has all your medical records. Of course, you can review those in preparation for your deposition. Oftentimes, I think it's really good to review your form interrogatory responses. Why is that? Well, I got a copy right here. Now, the form interrogatory responses are great because it has a lot of information about your case. And the reason it's good to review them is you want to have that information ready so you can help that defense attorney. You want to give them all the information they need to evaluate your case, and also just so we can have a speedy deposition. So reviewing your form interrogatory responses is a good idea, especially, I believe, form interrogatory 6.4, which I have right here. So form interrogatory 6.4, you can see there it asks, about each medical provider you've seen as a result of the crash, or the incident or the fall. Ask for their name, type of consultation, the dates you received treatment, and the medical charges to date. So that'll give you pretty much a chronology of all the medical doctors you've seen. And so a lot of times the defense attorneys, they like to ask about that. So it's good to just review that, and it'll make it easier for you to give them that information. That's form interrogatory 6.4. And then the 20 series, that has questions about if it's a car crash, how the crash happened, time, speed, distance, and these are all questions you've already answered for them, so they have this information, but it's not a bad idea to review your responses just to kind of refresh your memory. So looking over your form interrogatory responses is a good idea. So you can ask your attorney, hey, can you send me a copy of those? If you should already have a copy, but if you don't, just ask your attorney, hey, can you send me a copy? I'd like to review my discovery responses. There's nothing wrong with that. The attorney for the other side may ask you, what did you review? Tell them, I reviewed my discovery responses. Anything you review, it's 100% okay to tell the attorney what you reviewed. Obviously, we're telling the truth, and reviewing. There's nothing wrong with reviewing stuff to prepare for your deposition, because you're trying to help them out to give them all the information they need to help evaluate your case. last thing I want to talk to you about, don't stress. I know a lot of people have a lot of anxiety about doing their deposition because they haven't done one before. Take it from me, from having done over a couple thousand of these, nothing to be stressed about. I can tell you routinely, after the deposition is over, my clients always tell me, hey Lance, that deposition was so much easier than I thought it would be, you know? And after the first couple questions, any like anxiety and stress you have, it just goes away. You just get into the flow, because really you're just answering questions about your case. And guess what? Nobody's a better expert than you. What do I mean by that? Well, you're the only person that's going to be at that deposition who was there when the incident happened. You're the only person who went through all of that medical treatment, who went to those doctor's appointments, who sat in those waiting rooms, who felt that pain. So you're the expert there. Everyone else there, they don't know squat compared to what you know. So, let that give you some confidence. Like, hey, I know this is my case, right? It's not your attorney's case, not their case. You're the expert. You know it better than everybody. Why? You lived it. Doesn't mean you have to remember everything about the case, but that should give you some confidence. Like, hey, I'm the expert here. This is my case. I lived this for the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, right? Final thing, tell the truth. Most important thing about the deposition, just tell the truth. Don't exaggerate, don't embellish, don't lie, tell the truth. You're gonna do great. You're gonna have a really great attorney there representing you. And you have plenty of time to ask them any questions they had. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you.